Hello. When I bought Cascades Gardens in 1996, it was just a jungle. The house needed a new roof, and the garden was wild, hogweed, brambles, rocks all over the place, old elderberry trees and stinging nettles. Well, it took us a couple of years to clear all that, but the plan for the garden really came from the idea that, I was rushing around the world with Unilever, 2 or 3 weeks at a time, and it was nice to come back to a nice, natural, peaceful spot and relax, get away from the hustle of business, have a gin and tonic. So I've always had a passion for perennial flowers, and I was inspired by the 5-acre Dell garden at Bressingham and Alan Bloom back in the 1970s. And so we started at Cascades with oval beds of perennials. But we were lucky that since the 19th century, we have streams running through the garden from the Bonsall Brook at the far corner, and it cascades throughout the garden in the form of waterfalls and streams. And so we had lots of opportunities to plant marginal plants, water plants, and so on. So hostas and irises and astilbes and gunnera and all sorts of things like that. We've even had some pedicite come into the garden wild from the surroundings. So water planting, and the other thing about Cascades is that there's lots of semi-shade. We have some huge, wonderful 200-year-old trees, yews and beeches and sycamores. And so there's a lot of semi-shade. We have lime soil. It's always moist because of the water flowing through the garden. And so we were able to focus on hydrangea, water plants, hostas, hellebores, loved it, and lots of perennial flowers that liked a rich, moist soil. In fact, back in 1800, the water had fed through the mill race to the house, which was then a corn mill, and there was a big 26-foot diameter wheel. The water cascaded onto the top of the wheel, and the house in those days was a corn mill with grinding stones. There's still one in the front garden. The whole main part of the garden was basically a quarry, or a dell as they call it here. It's like a little gorge. And at this end of the garden, there is a lead mine. We were surprised to find it in the undergrowth. And it goes 50 meters into the cliff, into the hillside. And we've had great fun exploring it, and a lot of difficulty, but finally we've actually put lights all the way along the 50 meters of this exploratory tunnel. Well, with high cliffs and hillsides, we've now put walkways right the way into the tops of the cliffs. There's some fabulous views. And more recently, over at the hillside, we've put walkways. They've been there a long time, but we've put some handrails to make it safe. And it's added a new dimension to the garden, so you can now look down into the garden and see all the beds and the pathways from high up. Around you can see we have a nursery, and we must have 100 different perennial flowers here. And in March, when we first opened the garden, 1st of March, lots of hellebores. So we would have sold lots of hellebores this year. Sadly, with the COVID-19 problems, we have had to put all that to bed. But hellebores is one of the things that we do, and there must be 1,000 of them around the garden, and they look splendid this March. I've always been interested in conifers, particularly all the different varieties of conifers, and in 2015, when I first retired, we created a conifer garden. This was inspired by Bressingham, the son of Alan Bloom, Adrian Bloom, created then Foggy Bottom, and some of you may remember that. I went over there in 2016 with the family, and of course we bumped into Adrian Bloom in his garden there, and 40 years on from the first time that I'd seen it, it was a well-established conifer garden, and we were able to chat about that and underplanting and how to manage it. So what we've done here down the sunny side of the garden is create a fabulous conifer garden, about 100 different types of conifers, and lots of different textures, different colors and shades. It's been lots of fun exploring them, starting to learn their names, well, as long as they don't grow too quickly, we should have a wonderful developing border. My favorite types of conifers are the cryptomerias, the very Japanese ones, very feathery leaves, bright yellows and greens and so on. Well, if you'd like to come and see us, I hope you will when things blow over with the COVID-19 things, and we certainly hope to see you next year. And spring is a particularly lovely time. Last year the Daily Mail sent a journalist around and said, well, they think it's one of their favourite and most inspiring spring gardens, and we've had a lot of accolades from other press in recent years. Hope to see you soon.